my stepmom is bragging because I'm going to be disinherited after my father passed, but the joke's on her because my father, he found out exactly what she was up to before he passed away, and you guys should see the look on her face at the will reading. So I've got a stepmom. Now, I know what you guys are probably expecting as soon as you read that sentence, but that's not it. I mean, she was cruel to me, but that's not the only reason she's the villain in the story. She was also cruel to my father, who put time, effort, and money into making sure that she was happy and satisfied with everything that she had. My dad and I, we weren't super close, but we had a good relationship before the stepmom, Bailey, came into the picture. I was closer to my mom in every situation, and anytime I needed something or someone, I'd go to my mom. She was honestly my best friend when I was an angsty teenager and wanted nothing to do with my parents or my family. I was 12 when I went through that phase. I hated everyone and everything, and I just wanted to be alone during that time, which is why I feel like I left my mom alone in a lot of situations where I could have spent time with her. I didn't know my time with her was so limited though. How could I have known? She was healthy. She was eating well. She was working out every day. There was nothing wrong with her, or so we thought. Until one day, suddenly my mom starts having these weird symptoms that none of us were sure about. Right in the middle of the grocery store. At first she was probably, something like anxiety or so, but it got worse and she starts throwing up. Her jaw was hurting really bad, so we took her to the hospital. That's when the doctor told us that the symptoms that she was experiencing were a heart attack symptom, not anxiety. The reason my mom thought that they were anxiety symptoms was because she used to suffer from anxiety, which affected her physical health as well. She'd have jaw pain, shoulder pain, all of which were physical signs of anxiety. So when she got them again, she thought it's just the same thing all over. I mean, I don't blame her, but I wish my dad and I would have taken those signs a bit more serious than we did. She died of a heart attack soon after we reached the hospital, and we were told that there was nothing that we could have done to make it better because we brought her in too late. I was devastated. So was my dad. I involved myself in school and extracurriculars so much that I did not have the time to think about grieving. I just kept distracting myself anytime I would feel myself getting sad. That was my defense mechanism. My dad's defense mechanism was anger. He wouldn't scream or shout, but he's redirecting it, all the sadness and grief he was feeling, into annoyance and irritability. And because I was the only one living in the house with him, he took it out on me. However, he was still a good father during that time. Things started changing when he met Bailey, my stepmom. They met during a business meeting or something. I'm not exactly sure. However, I know that they did not work in the same company as each other. At least that's what Dad told me when he first introduced her to me. He started it off really light. He had asked me how I felt without Mom being here all the time, if I missed having a female figure in the family, and if I would ever want one, things like that. I did not think much of it because I thought he was genuinely curious about me and how I was doing. Dealing with Mom's death, considering it's only been less than a year since she's passed away. But then one night when we were having dinner together, Dad suddenly threw this bomb at me. He told me that he was seeing someone and she was interested in him a lot, and how nice she was and stuff like that. He seemed so happy about the entire situation that I didn't think twice before agreeing to meet her. In my head, if she was nice enough to my dad, happy after he sulked the entire year just trying to get over Mom, then I would do anything I could to support him and show him that I would not let anything hinder his happiness, because that's what mattered to me the most. At first, Bailey was really nice. I mean, the first time she came over, she even brought me flowers and a cute shade of lipstick that I absolutely adored. It was so nice and satisfying to finally see the color come back to my dad's eyes and face just by being around this woman. She was also really sweet to me. She made sure I was included in the conversation, and she made sure I felt comfortable, and that I knew I could ask her anything. So obviously I thought she was perfect for my dad. How could she not be when she made my dad so happy? A week after that, my dad told me that they'd made it official and that they're dating each other now. I was happy for them and I started seeing more of her at the house as well. It was nice, it was fun, everything was going great. Then they decided to get engaged, and their engagement and their marriage felt so rushed and I could not even explain what was happening. I had no clue how to deal with it because it felt like one day they were engaged and the next day they were already planning their marriage. Again, I didn't really care that much because Dad was happy and everything was going fine. I was actually optimistic that life was going to get so much better now that we're going to have additional support systems in the family. Of course, my luck was crappy because not only did her attitude change towards me, but she managed to convince my dad that I wasn't worth all the attention either. I was 16 when they got married, and right now I'm almost 19, so it's been 3 years since I've had to endure her and her stupid ideologies and rules in my life. Dad's attitude started changing really fast. He would not give me attention, he would not care about what I was doing, he would not even talk to me some days. He would be so involved with Bailey and whatever she wanted to do that he completely forgot that he had a daughter. It's like he took care of my financial problems and all that, but he wasn't there for me emotionally as a father should be. At one point, I asked him if I could borrow some money, because I wanted to go to this concert with my friends, and he gets really mad at me because Bailey told him that it's super ungrateful of me to try to ask him for money, especially because, well, I was already living underneath his roof for free and eating the food and stuff for free as well. I was shocked because my father has never made me feel like I could not ask him for money if I needed to. So, to see him act this way was very alarming. Then it starts to get worse because he just took out all the frustrations on everybody else and everything that he got from work and anywhere else on me, because he was too much of a simp to take it out on Bailey. So I'd always brace myself and just be mentally prepared to take insults and taunts. If my dad was in a bad mood, if he was in a good mood, he barely paid attention to me. Since this continued, I figured that he would not really care about me. I could do whatever I wanted without any consequence of my actions. That's when I started to act out. I partied every day, I hung out with my friends all day, and I never helped around the house, and I started to ignore both of my parents as well. My dad did not even notice that I was trying to ignore him or something like that. But when I started doing it to Bailey and started ignoring her calls, she started to get mad. The only reason I didn't want to pick up her calls was that she only called me if she needed me to do some work. Most of the time, I was so tired with classes and my part-time job that I did not really have the energy to do all the chores in the house as well. But none of them ever regarded me or my concerns, and instead told me that if I wanted to keep living in the house, I needed to pull my weight somehow. Now, when I was ignoring her calls and stuff, she got mad and then she told my dad about it, and it made it seem like I was being rude to her. Dad was so mad at me. He came home and starts yelling at me about being a brat and not having any respect for others. That was also the first time he slapped me. The first of many. I honestly never expected him to be physically violent towards me. I didn't expect him to be rude towards me either, but then he changed completely and started treating me like a stranger. So I guess I should not have been that surprised about the entire thing. Anyways, things were really bad at the house. My dad was getting really abusive and mad at me, and Bailey did not seem to care about it at all. And to make matters worse, Bailey got pregnant. My gosh, you guys. When I tell you that Bailey got so much more manipulative after she got pregnant, it was actually insane. I mean, from what I suspect, it's because she wanted Dad to disinherit me from the will, and she wanted everything for her and her child. The best way to do that was to show my father that I was a brat who did not deserve anything from him, and that she and her child were personifications of angels upon earth. Obviously, the more manipulative she got, the worse my dad got as well. He did everything she asked her to, and I'm pretty sure if she told my father to kick me out of the house, he would have done it, no questions asked. Then, around 7 months after Bailey gave birth to her son, suddenly my father started getting really ill as well. I mean, he was getting weak, starting to lose weight, had a fever, and all that. So we took him to the doctor, and it turned out my father has stage 4 cancer. He has about 6 months left with us, even with all the treatments and everything. I was devastated. Even though he didn't really care for me, I still loved him, and in my head, I was still waiting for my dad, who was there for me all these years when Bailey was not in our lives. She ruined everything for us, and I'm pretty sure that she doesn't even care or regret anything. I figured out that she didn't really care about my father as well when the first thing she did when he was diagnosed with cancer was ask him if he'd written the will already or not. That's how I knew she was only after the money. Of course, as expected, my father died a few months later. It was terrible, but I'm also a little happy because the last month or so was so terrible for him. I could see how much pain he was in, and even though he was on medication and stuff, the chemotherapy and all the other treatments were very uncomfortable and painful to him. So that's why I'm glad that he's out of his misery right now, but I'm still a bit upset by how much he had changed. I don't even know if I should grieve him or not because I'm not grieving the dad that he died as. I'm grieving the dad that he was and the dad I was waiting to show up again. Anyways, it felt like Bailey wasn't grieving at all. She actually seemed pretty content because she must have realized that everything was going to her now that dad was no more. But boy, oh boy, was she wrong. The will reading. It happened yesterday and it was the wildest thing ever. Bailey and I got the biggest shock of our lives right there at the reading. Dad's trusted lawyer, the one who had been with Dad for his entire life, was the one who did the will reading. The entire time, Bailey was taunting me and telling me how she could not wait to kick me out of the house and let me rot, because she knew there was nothing that could be done for me now. She was very aggressive with her teasing and taunting as well, and it made me really, really angry. But I kept it in. A new father probably left her everything, even though before he died, I told Dad something that maybe made him realize that I was his daughter, and I was the one who truly cared about him. I can't go into the details about what I told him because it's super long, and I genuinely don't have time right now because everything went crazy during the will reading. As it turned out, Dad actually did listen to me. When Father's lawyer started reading the will, Bailey was acting almighty and smug about the entire situation, but you know what? Then the bomb dropped. Dad left everything to me, every single thing, and Bailey was shocked to the core, and honestly so was I. With how whipped my father was for Bailey, I would have expected him to leave something to her, but nope, nothing. Everything was in my name now, even the house. The only condition that I had was I had to give Bailey a week before I could kick her out of the home, just so she can get her things packed up and sort everything out. The rest, everything was in my hands, and I felt so powerful, it's actually insane. Watching that smug expression fall from Bailey's face was priceless. Not just that, Father's lawyer also gave us some letters and told us that Dad wished that we would read them in private and not in front of everybody. So we both did not discuss that part, but Bailey kept arguing with the lawyer that there must be something wrong because my dad could never do that to her ever, no matter how hard the lawyer tried to convince Bailey that the will was legit. She was not ready to believe it and starts throwing a tantrum. I honestly could not handle all of it, so I got up and left, but before I did, I made sure to let her know that she had only one more week before I was going to kick her out. The shock on my face, it made my whole day. Honestly, I'm still thinking about it. Update number 1. So, I guess it's finally time to tell you guys what exactly my father changed in the will and gave everything to me, even though he slapped me multiple times and just did not care for me at all. But before I get into that, I need to give you guys the backstory of what actually happened, and, it made me reveal this secret. When we got home, Bailey just burst into her room and slammed the door, did not even acknowledge me or anything. I'm glad she did not, because I don't have energy to be dealing with her, but yeah, whatever. So, we both read the letter that Dad left for us, and I cried while reading mine. Basically, in my letter, Dad told me he believed what I had told him and was so sorry for how he treated me because he finally realized just how bad his wife has been treating me and manipulating him as well. According to him, it was like he was blindfolded and he didn't see what was happening right in front of him. However, he also acknowledged that it wasn't my fault. It was his fault for falling trap to Bailey's tricks and not looking and listening to what I was trying to tell him. The letter was very heartfelt and I actually started crying. It felt like my dad, the dad I loved, was back and he died loving me and caring for me again just like he did all those years ago. Anyways, Bailey's letter wasn't that heartfelt. Hers wasn't even a letter, if I'm being honest with you. She came barging into my room at the crack of dawn the day after the will reading and shoved her letter into my face. The laugh I let out was so hilarious. I could see it on her face that she did not expect me to let out a laugh like this at all. But her letter was just so funny. I knew my dad still had that cheekiness left in him. Anyways, her letter said, "That's what you get for cheating. That's it." Which is also exactly what I had told my dad. Bailey shoved the letter in my face and demanded that I explain what this was about, so I explained it to her. I'm about to explain it to you guys too. You see, a few months before my father passed away, I figured that Bailey was cheating on my dad. How I figured that out was, this was one time I was at this restaurant, a couple blocks away from my house, and I saw Bailey sitting there with a man, holding his hand and looking madly in love with him. I was shocked, obviously, because she was married to my father, and yet here she was, holding hands with another man. I overheard them talking about Daniel, Bailey's son, whom I used to think was my half-sibling, and the more I heard these conversations, the more I realized that Daniel wasn't even my dad's son. She had him with the guy that she was sitting with, and they were discussing how to keep the guy involved in Daniel's life without letting my dad know. Bailey was reassuring the guy that my dad had only a few months left, and that when he passed away, he would leave everything to her, so she would kick me out and have him stay with her in the house. Thank goodness for my quick thinking, because I recorded the entire conversation. I knew Dad would not believe me through my words, because he was still being manipulated by Bailey. Also, I knew that this recording would not be enough, so I figure I would get some extra proof. I sent Dad's hair and Daniel's hair for a DNA test to see if they matched. I knew they would not, and I also knew that there was no way my father would have been able to argue against objective and scientific facts. I got the results a month before Dad passed away, and I made sure to show to him when Bailey wasn't home, and I told him everything that happened, and he would not believe me at first. But I could tell he was just trying to fool himself because he kept looking at the DNA test results and just shaking his head. When I left the room, I genuinely thought that my father would not do anything about it, and it would probably scream at me later for butting into his business. I was equally as shocked when I heard that he left everything to me. When Bailey heard the truth of how Dad found out, she gets mad at me and starts cursing me out, screaming at me and blaming me for ruining her and Daniel's life. She also told me that if Daniel struggles in life because of all this, it would be my fault because I ruined it for him. I told her that if she cared about giving her child so much, she would not have done this in the first place, and reminded her that she had just had 6 more days to figure everything out before I would kick her out. Her reactions were honestly so satisfying, and I'm still thinking about them. Update number 2. The lawyer came back and brought even more good news for me. Bad news for Bailey, though. Anyways, yesterday the lawyer called and told us to meet him again because he had something important to discuss. I'm pretty sure Bailey thought that there was a mistake previously, and that she was getting something because she kept smiling at me throughout the entire car ride. And honestly, I was starting to get a bit anxious about the entire situation. Well, because Bailey seemed so confident. However, her confidence shattered when we reached there. According to the lawyer, there was another house that I inherited through my dad. Apparently, it belonged to my mom's parents, but when she died, my dad got control over it, and now that he was gone, and the fact that he left everything to me, well, it belonged to me. The lawyer even said that there was no condition on it or anything, and I had full control over the house to do whatever I wanted with it. I was so excited because finally I was getting something that would connect me to my mother as well, but alas, just like always, Bailey shattered that peace and excitement in less than 5 seconds. She created a fuss about how it's unfair that I was given so much and that she was given nothing. Then she started blaming the lawyers and even kept saying how he was in the wrong and he was lying because I told him to. Her argument was the lawyer should have mentioned this house in the previous reading, and the fact that he was mentioned this days later was very, very suspicious. The lawyer responded to her and told her that the reason he took a few days on this because they had to make sure if the house was under my dad's name or not, because it belonged to my mom and her family before that. That confirmation was important because it was a legal matter, and he did not want to put me in a situation where I had to give the house back in case it wasn't in my dad's name. Bailey was not a fan at all of this response because she stormed out of his office and I had to apologize to the lawyer for the fuss that she created in such a proper place. I was embarrassed, but I left as well. The entire car ride back home, Bailey was trying to convince me to give her the house we currently live in because it was, quote, incredibly selfish to keep them both to myself. I tried ignoring her as best as I could, but she continued it even when we went home. And honestly, at that point, I had enough of her selfish, whiny behavior. The only reason she was in this mess in the first place was because she could not keep her hands to herself and just wanted to ruin everything. It's night now, and I think she's asleep. Thank the heavens, because I cannot deal with any more of her whines today, especially after already screaming at her once and telling her that I was not going to give her a single penny, so it's better if she used her energy to find a job or a place to live. Update number 3. 1 week is finally over. This was honestly one of the hardest weeks of my entire life because of Bailey, and I'm so overwhelmed with everything that I legit felt like I was going to go insane. Especially because if you guys have not figured it out yet, Bailey was definitely not going to leave the house without creating a ruckus. I should have expected it, honestly. Firstly, she spent the entire week trying to convince me to help her out because she had nowhere to go, and she did not want to stay with the guy that she had a baby with because he lived in a tiny apartment, and she did not think that she could fit in well there. At first, I gave in because I started feeling bad for her. She's pretty good at emotional blackmail, so she knows exactly which strings to pull to make someone agree with you. I almost agreed with her, but then I remembered how she'd tell my father that I needed more beatings to knock some sense into me. That's when I decided that I would not help her no matter how emotional she gets. Then she told me that she had a lawyer friend as well, and she could easily ask him for a favor and have me give in some of the goods that I inherited from Dad. She was basically threatening me and telling me that she was going to make me give it up somehow, but I knew it was all bullcrap because her hands were shaking when she said it, and that always happens when she's bluffing. Third, and the thing that made me the most mad, was that she stole from me, or, well, she tried to. On the 7th day, I told her to pack everything she needed because I did not want her in the house the next morning. She seemed very pouty, but she did not put up a fight even though I expected her to. I mean, she was fighting me all week. Then an hour passed away and she still did not appear in the living room. I didn't think much of it because I thought she must have a lot to pack, so I let her be. But then I wanted water, and now, to go to the kitchen, you have to cross her room. When I went into the hallway that had her room in it, which led to the kitchen, I noticed her door open. She was stuffing all my gold jewelry and cash into her suitcase. I knew I had to get her caught red-handed because she would find a way to get out of the situation. That's why I quickly grabbed my phone and recorded her stuffing everything into the bag and looking frantic. Then I proceeded to call the police, and while waiting for them to arrive, I decided to confront her. At first, she was denying it, and I let her. I wanted to see the look on her face when I showed the video to the police. And boy, did it not disappoint. She was shell-shocked by the entire situation, and because the police had enough proof, they decided to arrest her. As they were dragging her out of the house, I made sure to let her know that she should never try any tricks with me because I come back and I come back stronger each time. Final updates. My mom went to jail for 4 to 6 months, and I'm not exactly sure. I wasn't keeping track because I just wanted her out of my house and out of my life as soon as possible. Once that was done and she was away, I had no interest in keeping up with what she's been doing. Who knows, maybe somebody bailed her out or something. I'm not sure how this works, and besides, I'm pretty sure she doesn't really have anyone to rely on because she messes up every relationship she's in. Anyways, even though I really wanted to keep her away from me and never interact with her ever again, she showed up at my house 2 weeks ago. Apparently, she got out of jail and now did not have anywhere to go. Daniel was also with the guy, but he wasn't taking Bailey in anymore because he did not trust her enough to know that she would not steal anything from him. She told me all of this when she came crying and begging on my doorstep, asking me to let her stay in the house or to give her some of the shares from the property and everything that I inherited so that she could, quote, make her life and live in peace. Why would I help her get peace when she made me spend 3 years of my life in chaos and made me stay on the edge of my seat because I never knew when one of them would get off on me? She didn't deserve my help at all, so I told her to get lost. I told her I would not help her at all because I felt no pity or anything against her. All I felt towards her was a hatred, and if I acted on it, I could do so many worse things to make her life miserable. But I don't because I don't want to get into that. I want to keep my life peaceful, and all Bailey does is ruin it. She kept showing up at my house because she had to live in this very tiny attic-type space that, according to her, did not even have space for more than 3 people at the same time. Bailey claimed that she'd do anything to make me forgive her, but she wants to stay in the house with me. I was so frustrated with her and her actions that I threatened her. I will call the cops. I told her that she needs to leave me alone or I was going to call the police and file a restraining order against her, because she already had such a terrible experience with me calling the cops. She got scared and left. It's between a while and 2 weeks, and she still has not shown up, so I'm taking it as a win and assuming that I scared her off enough to make sure she doesn't show up in my life again. Well, anyways, guys, that's it. Wow, guys, what a story. I want to hear from you guys about this one specific question. Can you guys even put yourself in these shoes? If the father in today's story did not take OP seriously and just give OP a chance to explain everything, well, then I think the outcome of this story would have been a lot different. But before the father passed, he changed the will and the rest was history. Guys, drop your thoughts down below in the comment section. I would love to talk to you guys about today's story. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every single day. And if you guys want to be a part of these daily readings, consider subscribing to the channel. It does help support it, and that way you never miss another video. Check out the description as well for my favorite playlist of stories, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, and of course remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.